Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to Charlton Live. I hope you guys are well. My name is Louis Mendez. On this week's show, we will, of course, be looking back at yesterday's 1-0 home defeat against Sheffield Wednesday at the Valley. Joining me so far on the show to discuss that game is Mr. Ben Clegg. How you doing, Ben?
Yes, mate. Good morning. I'm good, thank you. But yeah, in a good sense. But when you think about football, probably not.
No, yeah. I mean, it's always best to try and not think about football, isn't it? Really, but the problem is we're on a show about football, so we have very little choice for the next hour, but to talk about football. So we will hear the goal back in a few moments' time, so we can hear Steve Brown's analysis of that defending, which I'm sure you'll all love to hear. We're also going to hear the reaction from the manager, Dean Holden, of course, after yesterday's game. We want to hear from you guys. Those of you joining us on the live stream on YouTube, send over your comments in the comment field, or you can email us studio@charltonlive.co.uk, or you can tweet us at Charlton Live. Make sure you have your say on this week's show. Later on, we're going to have a special guest, as we often do. Just bringing in different faces from around the Charlton family today. It's going to be Kyle Andrews, the club photographer, is just going to come on and tell us a little bit about what he does and what he thought of yesterday's game as well. Before we hear the goal, Ben, and as I said, the comments have started flooding in already, so we will start discussing some of the things that people have said. Your overall thoughts on yesterday's game?
I think that first half was a bit men against boys, wasn't it? We couldn't get many touches of the ball. Ash's distribution was poor. It kind of seemed like as if Dean Holden said 5 minutes before you go out there, "Oh, boys, by the way, we're playing three at the back today," because it took them so long to get used to that they just, I mean, the goal was pretty comical, wasn't it? I mean, they're right back, if you like, has had all this time and space to just take a touch, look round him and put it in the corner. So, yeah, it was just very disappointing first half. I mean, they had 9 goal attempts to our 0, which is quite staggering, really, as we're the home side. And then I think the second half, they kind of gave us a bit of respect. Started time wasting, which I didn't think they needed to. And we got into the game. We had some good chances, but as the case has been so for a lot of games lately, we just couldn't finish those chances. So it made for an exciting second half. So that was good, although you just kind of felt we're never going to score here, even if it went on for another hour.
Yeah, we did come back into it in the second half. We had that big chance for Miles Lieburn, but I sort of agree with Ben. Like, I felt like we were building up a sort of head of steam, but actually I don't know if I ever felt confident we were going to get back into it. And we've been joined on the stream now by Joe Puddyfoot. How you doing, Joe? Good. Thanks for joining us. We're just summing up our thoughts on yesterday's 1-0 defeat. What did you think?
I thought we probably deserved to nick a point on the whole from the second half, but I thought we were just completely outthought and outfought in the first half. So it was one of those. I think we didn't necessarily get the rub of the green, but at the same time, as soon as Anike went off, I was like, well, there's absolutely no way that we're going to score now. And obviously he'll be out for a long time. But yeah, it was. Holden said, I think after the game, that he thought the shape worked for us. And I thought in the first half, the shape was quite a lot of our issues. With Clare and Blackett Taylor were just so far ahead of the ball. The back three just under pressure, and they just knew how to press us. They had men all over the pitch. It felt like they had 12 lads on the pitch at times, compared to us. So yeah, I think it was a disappointing. I was disappointed at full time, but I think I feel a little bit better than I was expecting to feel. Although I did give it quite large on the Sheffield Wednesday podcast how we're going to end their run, and then he asked me for my after-show thoughts, so I had to try and rescue some dignity, which I don't think I did.
No, there's one thing we as Charlton fans haven't possessed for a long time. It's a shred of dignity, unfortunately. But there we go. Right, let's have a quick listen back to the goal then from Charlton TV. This is more so you can hear what Steve Brown made of it, because he is a defensive expert. The way we defended that goal yesterday suggests we don't have too many defensive experts in the building.
Crossfield looking for the run of Windass. Ness following him all the way. Windass in possession. Deep in Charlton territory on the Charlton left. Ball into the middle, has picked up Bannon in space. Bannon thought about a shot, instead goes left. Ball now into the box on his Palmer all on his own. And it's an easy finish and Charlton 1-0 down.
Yep. Listen, it all started with a long diagonal. They pinpointed in behind Ness 3 times already in these early stages. This time they got in, they retained possession, they got up behind it. And this is what we talk about when we talk about purposeful football, playing forward quickly. You know, they don't hang around, they don't make 5 or 6 passes deep in their own area. They look to turn you around quickly, and then they play in your half. And they've done that very effectively there. Once they got control, it was a couple of passes, ball into the box, Palmer completely and utterly unmarked. Good first touch to open up a very, very simple side foot finish. Sheffield Wednesday 1-up.
There we go. That's just the highlights from yesterday. Just a goal. I wouldn't go too long into it because it makes you miserable, really, doesn't it? When we lose a game like that. As Dan has said in the comments, we need Steve Brown to work with the defence. We certainly need someone to work with the defence. It's not exactly been our forte this season, has it, Ben? And that goal yesterday, considering we've conceded a lot of really bad goals this season, that might just take the biscuit for me, because Liam Palmer strode into that penalty area completely unmarked. There was no one within 5 or 6 yards of him. It was utterly bizarre.
Oh, it was just so embarrassing, wasn't it? I mean, we are playing against the best side in the league. They're top of the league. But when you give them such an easy goal like that, it's so frustrating. And yeah, from that commentary, they were going over Ness's shoulder quite a lot. I mean, Bannon had that chance just before, didn't he, where he curled a shot and it hit the outside of the post, so the warning signs were there. But it's just, again, with the formation, like Joe just said there, they just all kind of got stuck in each other's way, and it ended up Innes coming out to Bannon on the edge of the box. He then lost his place. Dobson runs back in, and no one picks up Palmer. And he's hardly a goal threat, Palmer, because he's like plays on the right wing, like right wing back for him, and he's in acres of space to score. So as goals go, yeah, it was up there. I still think one of those Barnsley goals we conceded were worse than that. But yeah, I don't really want to do a competition of one of the worst goals conceded. But yeah, as I say,
don't say that. I was about to suggest we do that. that could be a fun top 10 show to do or something. Top 10 bad goals we've conceded this season. Yeah. The performance overall, Joe, Dan said it could have been much worse yesterday. We managed to keep it at 1-0. We should have scored a couple of times, but that's football. If you don't take your chances, you're not going to win. It was a strange game, like one of those, cliche game of two halves, because I thought in the first half we were nowhere near Sheffield Wednesday. As Ben mentioned, we didn't have a shot on or off target. They had 3 or 4 good chances. They'd already hit the post by the time that was that they went 1-0 up. It was a change in the second period, but overall it felt like once more a little bit, when we're playing those sides in the top 6, and obviously Sheffield Wednesday's case right at the top of the league, we feel like we're not quite on their level, and by quite I mean we're nowhere near their level.
Yeah, I mean and they've got quality in their side that we just don't have. Let's be honest, they've got players that can score goals throughout the team. They've got midfielders who can run the game. Bannon was finding space for absolute fun, and their defensive unit is stronger than ours. So when you're playing against these teams, there's always going to be a bit of a divide, and I think it just shows us where we are as a club. We're not near that level, and unless we have a really big overhaul, we're not going to be at that level. I just find days like yesterday, it's the hope that kills you. there's always a chance, but it just feels like we've gone from a team who's really good against the top sides, and then you wonder why we can't do it against the small sides, to being pretty mediocre across everything. It would be nice to be good against all sides, but we're not just quite there. I think for Holden in the summer, he needs to be now looking at how we rebuild, especially in these games when we know we're a long way off. Are there players that we can bring in out the youth squad to get some minutes, to at least feel like you're building towards something? So even if you are a long way off, you can go, well, yeah, but we are playing the kids, and that will stand us in good stead next season. I just don't think that we're going to be enjoying the likes of Sheffield Wednesday, and I think Plymouth's going to be another one where it's just a bit of a hiding to nothing, and you hope you win something. But yeah, it's frustrating times at the Valley.
Yeah, I mean, all hell let loose. Ben asked if he felt that all three centre backs work. So I mean, it is a question I asked Dean in his post match interview, which we'll hear later on in the show, about if perhaps the fact that we had switched to a free for the first time in a while, did that play a part in the first goal, because people didn't seem to know what their roles were at that point, people getting dragged all over the pitch. Do you think that could have played a part in it? I mean, we've tried different formations with varying levels of success this season, but no matter who we put in that back line, no matter how many of them we try and crowbar into that back line, we still give away silly goals. So could you argue it did work or didn't work, considering the amount of chances Sheffield Wednesday had?
Yeah, I mean, it's always going to be hard against one of the best sides in the league, isn't it? And you try and do something different. And obviously they play three at the back, so we were trying to match up with them. But yeah, I don't think it worked in that first half. And it looked like we changed to a 4 in the second half anyway, didn't it? It looked like Ness went to that left back. But I guess he's trying to balance it out as well, because you had Sessegnon that's doesn't ever seem to let his injury go at the moment, so can't start the game. I would love to have seen him come on yesterday. I think he would have made a difference, because we were finding a lot of space down that left-hand side and getting some good crosses in. But yeah, I think it was good to try and change it, because we tried to match up against them. And as I said, like, you're trying to fit players around the injuries we've got, especially at fullback. But yeah, I think they really got us there, didn't they? And Smith and Windass, they were very well organised side. They just played the ball around us really well. And I just don't think we coped well with how quickly they moved the ball and got in positions, and everyone forgot whose man they were supposed to be on, really, didn't they, at times?
Yeah, I mean, George said yesterday, overall not bad. It's another wake-up call for us, though. We are years off challenging for the playoffs, at least. And it still feels like that, doesn't it, Joe? Like, you know, even like someone like Corey, for example, yesterday, who is one of our better players. What did you make of him trying to get down the line and stuff? Did it feel like it didn't really fully work for him yesterday? And he's one of our players we were discussing the other day, whether he'd be part of our promotion-winning squad next season, which is obviously pie in the sky stuff. But what did you make of him yesterday, for example?
I thought he was on a bit of a hiding to nothing at wing back, because let's face it, he's not the strongest defensively, and it also makes it harder for him to get going down the line as well. I don't think we got the players for three at the back, so I think that when maybe you could do it with Clare and Sessegnon, but I do think that then you lose Raksaki and Blackett-Taylor's impetus. So when you're playing formations like that, you've got players like Blackett-Taylor who are just going to look a little bit all at sea. And if you'd have played Blackett-Taylor there or Raksaki there, I think you'd have exactly the same issue. And I actually think it contributed to Ness having a less than sterling performance as well, because a couple of times he looked to his left and then realised that Blackett-Taylor just wasn't doing the defensive work, and he was having to cover across. So yeah, it wasn't as dangerous going forward, and he wasn't particularly good at the defensive work. And I think we just lose that ability for him to get one-on-one against the fullback and just charge forward, which is his strength. His pace and power in that final third are up there. And I think he had one really good shot yesterday, but we just didn't get him into those positions where he can be effective. And it goes back a little bit to last season, I think, when we were putting square pegs in round holes. And he very much looked like a square peg yesterday, unfortunately.
Yeah, indeed. Joe's, you may have picked up got some sort of noise in the background. We're sat here in the chat trying to work out if his microphone's giving some feedback. It's actually a genuine noise in his house. So there's not a great deal we can do about that at the moment, but hopefully it will stop shortly. The thing I found, we said this about Derby last week, Ben, and I'll say it about Sheffield Wednesday again. And it's quite funny looking at the comments from our preview against Sheffield Wednesday because some of their fans weren't too happy with the way, I think in particular, Mark spoke about the arrogance of Sheffield Wednesday in League One. I do think I countered that at the top of the show yesterday by saying, look, if we were 19 and now 20 games unbeaten, and I went on Weds Week to discuss how great Charlton are, I would sound very arrogant as well. So I don't think Sheffield Wednesday fans should take it too personally, but that is the reputation they have because they're called the Massives and they have been for a long time. I'm sure they'll get used to it at some point. But I don't think they're all that. It's weird. Like I spoke to a journalist who covers Wednesday yesterday before the game. We always have a good old chat just to get an idea of what the other side's like. And he was like, they're functional. They do the job, and similar to Derby, I don't think they necessarily got out of second gear. And certainly in the second half, I thought, I don't know, tactically, I thought they were a bit strange. I feel like they could have killed us off if they spent another 15, 20 minutes on the front foot like they did in the first half, but they really seemed to go into their shell. I don't know how much of that was us and our impetus that we got after the break, but yeah, I wasn't overly impressed. And I don't often say that by a team that's just broken their undefeated record that's been held since the 60s.
Yeah, I think I said it earlier in the show. I was quite confused how they started time wasting a lot and just trying to annoy us, really, because I thought you guys played so well in that first half. And they weren't amazing in that first half, but they played the ball round really well. You could see how organised they were. I mean, I was very impressed with Flint and Iorfa, and I was very confused why we kept whacking it long. High up in the air for Liban to try and head it on or something, because you think those two are such an experienced pair that they're just and they're very tall as Liban, and they dealt with everything we were trying to do like that. So yeah, and I thought Fanwo had a good game, just like that comments come in. I thought he was decent, but we saw that when he was with us, didn't we, with Fanwo? We thought that some games he would look really good, and then some games he looked quite poor. But you can only play as well as the people around you, can't you? And we've had a lot of bad defenders around him in the last few years. But yeah, I think I was confused with them. But do you remember when Arsenal went on that amazing 49 unbeaten run? They started to go into their shell after a while. They either took the lead and thought, right, we're just going to stick defensive now and make it through the game. And I think that's kind of what they did in that second half. It was quite confusing, but not saying they were as good as Arsenal. They were quite poor in that. I've
been saying it for years. That Arsenal team that went 49 games unbeaten were rubbish. They probably look at Charlton and they're looking up to us. Yeah, SNC Davin said the goal was awful. Fameway had an excellent game for Wednesday. A player many of us were happy to see go. Yeah, I mean, I put a slightly sarcastic tweet out early on in the game saying I hope we get to see him play like a crossfield ball that goes straight out of play or prod one up the line that goes to no one, because he did do a lot of that yesterday. Morning to Gaz, he says this is great for a Sunday morning. Yeah, Freeman says wasn't massively impressed with them after that. Wednesday fan said it was the best football he ever saw, but similar to Derby, you felt that they didn't need to get into a higher gear to win. Biggest moment for us, Joe, was that chance for Miles Leaburn. It was great to see him back in the side, and he certainly did more than Macaulay Bond did. Chucks, I thought, played well when he came on, but in terms of our strikers and in someone that we hope is going to be fit for more than 20 minutes, I think Miles coming back could be quite big, and shame he couldn't take that chance because he did well to get beyond the man, but it was a poor finish from him, not what we've come to expect from him.
Yeah, I thought when the pass went into him, the chance had already gone because he was a little bit behind him and he had to track back and three players had covered by the time he got hold of the ball. So he did really well to get into the position and just snatched at his shot. But I think that we snatched at a few yesterday. He should be putting it on target from there, but he is a kid. He is going to make those mistakes, and we are going to have to bear with him. And his goal return for us is really, really, really strong. So I'm not that worried about it writ large, but it would have been nice to have nicked one, because I think at that point we were on top, and it would have been interesting then. Do Sheffield Wednesday kickstart themselves and come out, or do they sit in and hold on for the point on the basis of they're just all about the unbeaten run, and that's the most important thing. So it was one of those pivotal moments that just didn't quite go our way. But he has that silky touch and the ability to beat a player that we don't have when we've got Bon up there, as well as holding up the ball. So you do feel so much more like there is a goal in the side with Leeburn there than Bon, and it's just a bit of a shame that he couldn't maximise that opportunity. But I just hope he's fit, because he looked like he picked up a knock when he went off as well. So I do hope he's fit for Saturday. So it'd be nice to get him a run of games in the side again. And if he is playing regularly, he tucks that away, I reckon.
Yeah, certainly. Right, morning to Jonathan West from the Charlton Upbeats. I hope you're well, Jonathan. Thanks for joining us on the live stream. Yeah, Chris saying he agrees with me that only Bolton have really impressed us over the last few weeks. And that's part of what I found so challenging from the games against the top six sides recently, like Derby, Sheffield Wednesday, that they haven't had to get out of second gear to beat us, whereas we know we'd have to play our very best to go and get a result against them. HTTR says, just goes to show you don't need much to get out of this division. For a pair of strikers that could score goals, and that's certainly something we feel about. Chooks went off injured. Ben made a real difference when he came on. I thought we looked he was really linking up play nicely, giving Sheffield Wednesday something to think about. But then he's injured again. You know, he's since I was working it out this morning for my takeaways, or last night, 53 games since he's come back. So the first game when he came back last season was Cheltenham away. Since then, we've played 53 games. He's featured in less than half of those, 22, I think it was. Started 5 of them. That's a problem, isn't it? I mean, we've put a lot of our hope and our financial resources into Chooks, and we're unable to get any realistic playing time out of him, and that's going to be a massive problem going forward for the next 2 or 3 years as well, the rest of his contract.
Yeah, it's a massive shame. Look, ability-wise, he shouldn't be playing in this league, really, because I think he's too good. But unfortunately, his injuries are what holds him back, and there's no one hurting more than he is right now. He didn't ask to, well, I'm sure he asked to be put on that contract, but it was a club that decided to give it to him. It's not his fault at the end of the day. I do dreadfully feel sorry for him because, as I said, ability-wise, we've seen what he can do. And as you said yesterday, I think he came on, he made a massive difference. That flick on and the chest down, half volley, keeper spills it, and Liban just missed out getting there. The defender got there and first. He does make a massive difference. His presence, his ball, taking the ball on with players see his presence. They get scared when he comes on. We know what he can give us, but yeah, unfortunately, it doesn't look like we'll see him for a while if that's his hamstring gone. Yeah, a massive shame, but yeah, I don't know what you do. I know Holden tried to get a pre-season going with him in the last when he pulled up against Portsmouth and missed the warm-up, but it's only so much you can do with him, it seems. I mean, what was it? A bit of an innocuous stretch with that defender yesterday, wasn't it? And he kind of just pulled up straight away and you knew it looked bad. So, yeah, massive shame for Chucks, and I really feel for him. But, yeah, I don't know what way you can turn to now. We've just seen it so many times with him now, haven't we?
Yeah, when we bring in our guest, Kyle Andrews, a bit later on in the show, I'm going to ask Kyle about the mental strain of constantly being injured on players. Kyle did his mental well-balling podcast where he spoke to players like Lewis Page, Jake Forster-Caskey, who've been through that. So actually, from a player's point of view, I think Kyle can give us a bit of insight on that. Dan said he feels for Chooks. Surely at some time we'll have to reconsider his options. Are we rushing him back and he keeps getting injured? I don't think we are rushing him back if we're looking at the amount of time he spent out. Paul said Wednesday were reasonably dynamic in the first half, but certainly not Bolton levels. To have any hope, we need a rebuild of the 2011-12 pre-season proportions, which is not happening under the current ownership. Yeah, I mean, we'll come on to that shortly. And then Tommy is listening out in Perth in West Australia, morning or evening, I guess, out there, Tommy. Didn't watch the game last night due to time difference. Do you reckon we knock this season on the head and started recruiting players for next season? In an ideal world, yes, we would. But unfortunately, because of the ownership crisis that we're in, we can't really suggest that we can do that yet. It's bizarre. Right, let's hear from the Addicts boss, Dean Holden. Came to speak to me after yesterday's game. I asked for his thoughts on the defeat against Sheffield Wednesday. Defeat against the league leaders. What did you make of it overall?
You know what, Louis, you can't give I mean, I think they've gone 20 games unbeaten, a club record. You can't give a top team a leg up like we did. I mean, I've not seen the goal back yet, to be fair, but Palmer seemed to stroll in onto the penalty spot with no one near him, and it's an easy goal from their point of view. Really poor from us, but you know what? I didn't think there was a lot in the first half. I think they had isolated chances and big chances, but we had some decent control. We didn't really get in behind them enough and threaten them enough. And the message at half time was to do exactly that, was to play with more purpose. That's all Sheffield Wednesday did to us. You know, they turned us around. They didn't try and overplay. They got up on second. That's all we did. 15-20 minutes at the start of the second half. That's all we did, and we had some chances from it, didn't we? And if Miles' chance goes the wrong, a centimetre the other side of the post, we're back in it at 1-1. And who knows what could happen. So they are fine margins. I don't like admitting it, to be honest, but I think we have to say that that's where we want to be as a club, and you have to look at the season as a whole. And they're on such a great run at the moment. You can see that confidence within their team. There's a real spirit, and the players kept going second half. To be fair to them, they've got no complaints at all with work rate or anything like that. It was just a little bit of a quality difference, I think, in that final part of the pitch.
Yeah, changed the shape. Was that to match up Sheffield Wednesday today? And do you think perhaps that played a part in the first goal? They're still getting used to their new roles?
No, I don't think. I mean, I'm going to watch the game back tomorrow, like I do every Sunday afternoon, or Sunday morning. But no, I wouldn't say so. I think overall, you look at the game. I think that they've got two strikers up there, whether it's Smith, Windass, whether it's Gregory that comes on. They're going to give you problems, and I felt like we needed an extra centre back in there. You have to think about set pieces. They've got three giants at centre back. They've got obviously Smith up front. They've got Palmer at wing back, who's a big old boy as well. So you need to be mindful of that as well. But it certainly wasn't a team that would, to combat them as such. It was I felt a team that could get our better players on the pitch and give us that strength and solidity.
What did you think was the change in that second half? Because Charlton certainly came back into it in the final 25 minutes or so.
We played with more purpose. We passed the ball forward more. We didn't, we'd have had, if you look at the stats, which I'm not too interested in, to be honest, but I think that would probably back it up. We had less passes in our half. We played in their half of the pitch. I remember being stood in the dugout and my eyes were focused on the covered end for certainly for 15-20 minutes of that second half. And we had waves of attack and we put them under pressure. We asked them questions. As I say, we just couldn't quite find that moment of quality to get us back into it.
Chuck's made a big difference when he came on, and unfortunately he's had dreadful luck with his injuries over the time at Charlton. Do you know sort of early prognosis of what's happened there?
Yeah, well, he's awaiting a scan on Monday. I think we'll get the weekend out of the way. It looks like he might have pulled his hamstring on first diagnosis, but we'll see what the scan result says on that. So fingers crossed, to be honest. I think Chuck's has obviously had a really stop-start season. He's worked so hard in this 4 or 5 week period that he's to get himself back fit again, and again we'll just have to see. But you're right, he had an impact when he came on. I think we have to mention Miles Leaburn as well. I think he's been out injured for a couple of weeks, and I thought he led the line well. He's difficult against three giants around him who are really physical. But I think in terms of his development and moving forward, that was a real plus for us.
Yeah, and looking ahead just to Peterborough on Tuesday, they put 5 past Plymouth today, so they'll obviously be in good spirits. That'll be another tough one for you.
Yeah, of course, every game is. I think that underlines. I think that underlines the division, doesn't it? The fact that they've gone and won 5-2 at home to Plymouth today. Hopefully, Jez Raksaki won't get a knee-high challenge like he got in that first half today. I don't like talking about referees, but that's not a red card. I've not seen a tackle like that for a number of years now. It's a ridiculous tackle, and how it didn't lead to them going out 10 men, I have no idea. But it's certainly not the reason we lost the game. I don't like it when our better players are targeting like that.
Lucas Ness made a crucial intervention to keep Josh Windass out. How important has his contributions been over the past few weeks?
Well, he's a really good young player, Lucas. Obviously, he spent the first half of the season on loan prior to me coming in at Torquay. And coming into the job, I was looking at different options to get certain players in the team, and he really impressed me in that first period of training sessions and games, and he's Mr. Consistent. He's got a lot to learn, I have to say, positionally, and when he's going against certain different types of strikers, you have to mix his game up a little bit. But he's certainly got the raw attributes for a young centre back to go up a level and have a really good career. I've worked with centre backs of his ilk in my time previously. I think about Adam Webster, we signed at Bristol City from Portsmouth. He spent 1 year with us and then got a fantastic move to Brighton in the Premier League. And I'm not comparing the two, but I'm saying Nessie's certainly got attributes that could get him to that high level. I think the biggest one of all of it is his temperament and his attitude. And he was the first to admit he's got a lot to learn. He's got a lot to develop. But I've been pleased with him over over the period of time. Yeah.
Thanks.
Right, welcome back to Charlton Live. We just heard from the Addicts boss, Dean Holden, after yesterday's defeat against Sheffield Wednesday. All hell let loose. Asked why he sounds so miserable talking to me, but happy speaking to Charlotte. I don't know the answer to that. I have to say I hadn't picked up on that. Maybe it's my dour interviewing style where he knows it. I've got to put him on the back foot. There's always a question coming. Now, point of discussion earlier on, that a couple of people have asked questions now. I've just brought up, for those watching on YouTube, onto the screen a picture of Dean Holden in the Oak yesterday. Whenever I go in there, something happens. That's only the second. I think that's only about the second time I've been in there in the last year, and the first time was when Thomas Sandgaard started playing his guitar. I did start wondering if Dean Holden was going to start strumming a few notes at some point, but it caused a bit of consternation. I say. The strange thing was, so yesterday pre-game, I was sat in the press room having a chat with a few people because I'd seen on Twitter a tweet about Dean going into the pub and sticking 100 or 200 quid behind the bar. And a few people were saying, well, why is he doing that? And when I then put up that picture of him in there yesterday, again, it got a bit of a mixed reaction from supporters. Bob saying, what do you guys think of Dean Holden drinking with the fan? I'm not sure it sits right with me. I can't make up my mind. It's a strange situation that doesn't happen everywhere else. Davin said, I don't get the outrage from some fans regarding Holden going down the Oak last night. And Dan saying Holden doing what he did at the pub before and after shows his class as a person. I'm curious as to what you thought of it, Ben. So obviously you were in there with me. I wasn't hanging around long anyway. I was only in for a quick one and then I shot off. So I don't know how long Dean Holden stayed or anything like that. When you look at it, so I mean, Thomas going in the pub last year and playing his guitar, massive ego trip. We all knew what that was about. Even those of us who were in there were like, this is weird. Back in the old days, and this is something you hear from a lot of more experienced supporters, is that you'd go to the pub after and the players would be there, and then you see the player on the bus on the way home and the manager. Players and managers were a lot more accessible. That's not the case now. Did you find it strange that Dean does that, or do you find it good, like Davin has said there, and Dan as well? Like he's being sort of interpersonal, or do you think he's trying too hard to win the fans over? Which way do you see it?
I thought it was good. I mean, we turned around, didn't we? And he come walking in. He was with his two kids, and it wasn't like he was sat down and having a laugh, going, "Oh yeah, we lost, didn't we? We were rubbish," or anything. He was stern faced. He was sat down talking to supporters. I mean, he went around the whole pub. You just saw him, like people were talking to him, asking his viewpoints, asking different bits and bobs. I think he saw you and thought, and then he started to be miserable again because he didn't want to start talking to you. He wanted to talk to Charlotte, obviously. But no, I thought it was good.
His face did change when he saw me. He was like, "Oh, you're in here as well, are you?"
Yeah.
I'm not going to ask you any more questions now. I'm here.
But I got a picture with him and my mate, and he didn't smile in the photo. I put it up in the group chat, and I was like, "Cool." He looks awkward, but he just said to me, he was like, "I don't want to smile. I'm not really happy, but I talk to fans and stuff like that." So I thought, yeah, look, when have we had a manager go in the pub? I think fans kind of read too much into stuff. I think the vibe is so negative at the moment that we're just trying to latch on to other negative things. Like, look, if you don't agree with some of his tactics of late and you think our performances have been bad, plenty of people said that to him yesterday, and he realises that as well. But I know he's going to the cup final today, so that's why he was there with his kids, and I think they're going down to the game at Wembley, so just getting ready for that. And yeah, I think it's open, honest chats with people. It's good. Yeah, because it's not happened before. I don't think you can relate it to anything else, can you? Really?
Yeah, I think that the obvious connection that people were making was to when Thomas went in and played his guitar, which was like, when you're the owner in charge of a club that's doing extremely poorly, should you be focusing on strumming your ego and your guitar in the local boozer, or should you be worrying about other stuff? But a lot of fans said that about Dean yesterday. Should he be mixing with fans like that, trying to win them over after a poor performance just because he's a good bloke like that? And he's a good bloke. That doesn't make him a good manager, for example. That's what some of the comments were like on Twitter. I mean, Joe, obviously not the right pub as far as you're concerned, because you own the micro pub a little bit further down the road. But yeah, what did you think about it? I mean, all hell let loose says Curb, Steve Brown and Scott Minto are allowed to go to the Oak post game, but is Dino not allowed to? Well, I guess the difference there is none of Curbs, Brownie and Minto have responsibility for the running of the team at the moment.
Yeah, and they tend to do it when we play away games as well, when they know it's quiet and they don't have to answer the questions about why we're so bad, which is a better tactic, I would say. Look, I'm all for more engagement with fans. I think it's a positive thing. I do think that it's almost a nice way for him to signal to people that regardless of what's happening behind the scenes, he still wants to be part of the club, and he has bought into us as a fan base, and it does help build that connection as well. So I think it is a good idea writ large. And if he only went in when we're winning, then people will be like, well, okay, you just want the adulation and the applause. I think it's quite nice for him to actually take it on the chin and do it when the chips are down and accept it. So, I think we've got to remember these people are managers and players are people too. And they deserve a little bit of freedom in their life and enjoying it. And, Carl would have a pint in Greenwich on a Friday night before a game, when he was manager. So, I'm actually happier with him having a pint after the game than the Friday night directly before the game, blatantly in the area. Because I think it's sort of your work's done then for 24 hours until he's back on the training ground, on Monday. So, yeah. There's a lot of wrong things in the club, and I don't think that's one of them.
Yeah, Dave said, Dean at the Oak, not a problem. It's a free country, and he is a genuine guy. And Chris said that Benji was spot on. It's not an ego trip. It's just a geezer having a few beers, chatting to fans. Like I say, back in the day, I mean, Derek Hales would probably be in the pub before the game. The players and managers were a lot more accessible, and it's a different world now. And I can sort of see both sides of it. And because it can be considered maybe a little bit transparent. That people sort of want to get their face out there and be seen as a good bloke, because Dean is trying to negotiate a new contract at the moment. But this is a strange club that we are at this moment in time. Talking of the strange club, let's bring up this tweet onto screen from Richard Corley yesterday. So we saw in the Daily Mail yesterday morning there was some sort of claim from clearly from Mevin that he's going to be launching legal action to the tune of £50 million. For a loss of potential earnings and profits, which is, I don't know where he plucked that number from, but it's awfully similar to the one that you got to buy the value for as well. Every time I hear that number, I'm like, oh God, not that again. But then Richard got some quotes off Thomas Sandgaard about the threat of legal action. Thomas said he says there hasn't been any legal action so far. They have threatened that they want some compensation plus their non-refundable deposit back. Sandgaard says the SC7 group clearly lost exclusivity on February the 1st by not funding 90% of the club's expenses from that point forwards. Thomas said on February the 10th he had enough of their negotiating tactics and told them they were no longer negotiating. I don't want to focus on this for too long, to be honest, Ben, because it's confusing and it feels like a load of nonsense and posturing from both sides once again. But my only concern is how long, because part of the threats from Mevin are that he'll add any other potential new owner into the lawsuit. So it's clearly a delaying tactic to try and screw us over. Whether it's actually got any legal basis, I don't know. I'm not an expert. I'd be surprised if it did. But it just goes to show that a lot of the characters who try and come in and buy the club and get involved in arguments on both sides, they only care about themselves and not the football club, and they're willing to risk putting us further behind on where we need to be for their own pure financial greed. And that says a lot about the sort of people that we're going to attract as a club at the moment.
Yeah, so infuriating. I think you hit the nail on the head there. It puts us behind. We've got fans coming in, and obviously us three are really trying to gain some positives now. Look forward to next season, try and give the youngsters a go, like Henry, like Kanu, and try and get them into the side so we can give them a chance. And then if they look good, like Ness has done, then they're in the squad for next year, and then we don't have to worry about that position as much, like trying to give players a go. But with all this happening in the background, and then him trying to say, Mervyn trying to say, it's going to stop new ownership coming in because they don't want to deal with him and this legal threat and stuff. Who's that helping? It's not helping you guys. You're what? Surely his group will now want to try and take over another club if they can't take over Charlton. Sandgaard then can't move the club onto someone else because they've got this threat, and all it does is affect us fans. We're sat here. Players can leave. Players can just go, I don't want to stick around here. So I want to have a good season next year. And clearly at Charlton, they can't get the players in at the moment. They don't know who the owners is. So it just really affects us as fans, doesn't it? It's so infuriating. I mean, you just don't know where the end game is, do you?
No, and well, it's an absolute mess as per usual. Right, we're going to bring in Kyle in a few moments' time. Before then, we've still got emails and stuff to come to later on in the show. A few more comments from fans, but as always, we like to get some other fans' voices on the show as well. So Ben very kindly delved into the fans' bar for us after yesterday's game and asked a couple of supporters for their views on the defeat against Sheffield Wednesday.
I thought it was going to be an absolute drubbing, to be fair. So 1-0, I'd take it all day long. But we didn't have anything. I mean, I was really good it was good to see 3 at the back and 2 up front. But Raksaki was limited. He didn't get on the ball. And then when he brought Bon on, or when he brought Anike on, it just didn't add anything. It seemed like we were really limited in space. They just seemed to be all over us. They seemed to have 2 extra players playing at half time.
Well, I was in Derby last week and I was at today's game and I was at other 2 home games. I've not seen no improvement in 4 games. If we'd have had 20 strikers today, it wouldn't have made no difference. We don't look like scoring. We look like collapsing every time the other team come forward. Very poor first half, better second half. I don't know where we go from here. We need to get clear out of players, clear out of management, and then we go on from here. And then next season, let's just move on. It's going to take a long time to get into Championship, but we have to start now.
I don't think we've got enough. I think overall, Kilkenny in the middle worked well. Dobson was great. He was all over the park. Fraser got on the ball, but we didn't seem to have any oomph. I'll be honest. I think half the folks are on the beach. I know the players are still working hard, but we're not playing for anything, and I think that comes through. I don't think they really chased anything down that they would have done at the beginning of the season. We're all trying to prove themselves. Raksaki knows that he's dominated. He's done his thing. So as long as he keeps moving, he's not got anything to lose. I just don't think that there's. I think the players know that the season's over, to be honest.
Yes, I do. I think we need Macaulay Bon isn't the striker that he was when he left here. We tried playing Leeburn up front. He doesn't have the players, and I don't blame him. I just wished he would be more honest with the fans and say we haven't just got it, and try and do it. With the Holden factor's gone, and we have to sort of try and get the 50 points and then move on. Don't blame Holden at all.
Well, there we go. That was the views from the fans bar after yesterday's game. Thanks to Ben, who went and spoke to a few supporters there. It's one of my favourite features on the show because I love to get other people's voices on it. And part of that is our new feature where we're going to start having various people from around the Charlton family join us on the show on a Sunday. So last week we had Greg Stubley, the club commentator. This week it's Kyle Andrews, the club photographer. Good morning, Kyle. Good to see you.
Good morning, Louis. Pleasure to be here.
As always, everyone should say that. It's always a pleasure to get to look at the face of Benji Cloak on a Sunday morning via a computer screen. Well, before we sort of delve into, I thought one of the more interesting things that you'd be able to tell us about mental aspects of how players feel when they're injured. Just your overall thoughts on yesterday's game from a slightly closer perspective than a lot of us. You're basically on the pitch where you sit. What did you make of yesterday's performance?
I mean, I think my main takeaway was what happened at the other end of the pitch at full time, actually. It was seeing the Sheffield Wednesday fans and the Sheffield Wednesday players celebrate in the way that they did. Someone said to me after the game that they felt it was a bit over the top, a bit much, but when you've gone 20 games unbeaten, when you're top of the league, when you're heading towards promotion, you enjoy every second. And you enjoy those moments, both players and fans. And you look at that and you just think, apart from having to be Northern, I wish that was us. And
Well,
you can see
you're originally
that.
from Milton Keynes, which is basically northern as far as I'm concerned. But
we'll argue about that later. But yeah, that's kind of the takeaway. Is it just we feel so far away from that, and I wish we weren't. Wish that was us.
yeah, and it's not. And like I say, I'm surprised we can even remember what it's like to be to be a team that's challenging for promotion. It feels like a long time ago. Now, of course, other than being the club photographer, one of your projects over the last few years is you ran the Mental Well Balling podcast, which was looking at football, not just Charlton, but obviously quite a lot of Charlton influence in there as well, in terms of the mental aspect of the game for some of the players involved in it. Now, that of course that includes players who are out injured a lot. So Chukwuemeka, obviously, sadly, the current example of that has had all sorts of injury problems. He's now going to be out for a third stint this season. You spoke on your podcast to the likes of Jake Forster-Caskey, Lewis Page, who have been through instances like this. Can you give us a little insight into what it's actually like for the player? Because we as fans, and we're all guilty of it, and hopefully while gaining more of an understanding of what it's actually like, we can perhaps think differently. But we just think, oh, I can't believe it. So-and-so's out injured again. What are they doing? What are they like? They're not trying hard enough. But from the player's point of view, they don't feel like that at all. It's a completely different story.
No, I think it's, first of all, as a fan, it's difficult to look at a footballer as the first and the footballer second. And I think that there's an appreciation of that if you've not got a connection with a player, if you don't speak to the players, if you don't understand that there is a human being behind the bloke that kicks the ball twice a week. And it's tough for footballers as well, I think, to separate themselves from being a footballer. It's something that is drilled into them, but it's very hard to avoid building your identity around just being a footballer and not being a human being. From a young age, all you want to do is be a footballer. They're putting in hours and hours from the age of 8 until the age of 18 to earn that professional contract. It defines who they are. How they perform on a Saturday or a Tuesday defines their worth and their value. And when you're injured, you lose that. You lose your identity. You lose your way of proving your worth and your value. I guess the counter argument to that is, well, when they're injured, they're just earning money for not doing the full extent of their job. What's there to complain about that? Well, the process of recovery is a grueling one. It's you go into the training ground every day. You're off to the gym to do physio work to try and recover. You look out and see the grass, and you see your teammates kicking the ball around doing what you want to be doing. And especially when you're having to go through that process again and again. I mean, it's interesting speaking to Jake Forster-Caskey, who said he found the second time around in a way easier than the first time around from the mental perspective, because he was able to, because he'd been through it before, he knew the process, he knew what was going to happen, he knew the landmarks and the goals that he needed to reach. He could break it up more easily. It wasn't right. There's 11 months until I'm back. It was a whole week. This will have happened. After 6 weeks, this will have happened. These are what I need to get to. But at the same time, there's no getting away from the fact that doing a second ACL injury in 3 years was a very tough thing to take. And it will be the same thing for Chucks. He of course, as Benji was saying, doesn't want to be injured. It's no reflection of him as a person, or reflection of him as someone who doesn't put in enough effort or anything along those lines. So I just think that it's very, very important that supporters look at the human being first rather than the player, and at the very least,
yeah, and it is tough.
Have some empathy and consider what through, rather than the first thing they go for is abuse or criticism or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I remember one of the biggest eye-opening things from your podcast was the one with Lewis Page, where he sort of revealed what was within his DMs on Instagram, like the torrent of abuse he got from Charlton supporters for being injured. I found that utterly bizarre because, of course, he doesn't want to be injured. Of course, he doesn't want to be in that space, and he's sitting there struggling with what's happening to himself and his career, and then he's got fans sending him, going out of their way to DM him abuse, so personal and nasty. I've never understood that at all. It's really bizarre. All hell let loose. There's very few other professionals get their performances assessed once or twice a week by hundreds, thousands of people. Footballers must be able to turn off the social media noise, and we do hear a lot about players who've been on the receiving end of things, trying to take themselves away from that space, the social media, because it is tough, and that'll be what Chucks is going through at the moment in time. Right, hang around, Kyle. We're going to get to a couple of the emails as well, but I'll just keep you involved in the general discussion. We'll look ahead to Peterborough very, very briefly at the end as well. Kyle said, "Morning, gents. I just wanted to say let's skip over the first half, but it's becoming too much of a regular thing. The second half of Forest Green, all of the Derby game, and then the first half today, we looked like strangers. We couldn't keep the ball across the pitch. We gave it away so often. It was easy for Wednesday in the first half. We didn't challenge them or get close to them. And again, they were in second gear and should have been out of sight. Second half, we raised the tempo, had a bit more of a go, but we could have been clinical. Liban had to bury that chance. Corey Blackett-Taylor put in an awful ball, or Fraser slowed down a threatening counter. I understood why Dean wanted to go with 3 centre-backs and 3 central mids. I don't really think it worked, though. Too many players were out of position or didn't look up. We need some positives, but I can't think of many. Ness was decent. Desrak Saki had some good touches, allowing to get away from markers. I was expecting more from Wednesday after your mate's 10-minute chat on Thursday, but perhaps they just didn't have to try so hard, and all the cheating had them covered. Keep up the good work. You guys are the only positive attached to Charlton at the moment. I love the live shows, and we'll watch the Sunday one on repeat. Good luck to all those going Peterborough and Plymouth. A bunch of crazy people. Yeah, next weekend is going to be really interesting with Peterborough beating Plymouth by 5-2. So we've got the double whammy of Plymouth still being the side in the top 2 that we have to play next weekend, which will be quite tough, but also playing a Peterborough side bang up in terms of confidence. Gary said it was awful. What have we watched this afternoon? 90 minutes of football. We didn't once put Wednesday under any sort of pressure. A couple of chances in the second half was the closest we came. Wednesday seemed to almost think they're using the game as a bit of practice. Could have easily upped it if needed. The scary part is that if that was the best team we could put out, the future does not look good. I mean, Carl, you were there at Derby last week as well. It is quite clear that we're not there, are we? We're not in a situation anywhere near a team like that. And obviously, we've touched upon the chaos off the field. It's the thing that gets me at the moment is there's no end in sight. There's no light at the end. Oh, have we lost Kyle there? Have you guys lost me?
No, sorry, you cut out there for me, Louis. But I got the gist of what you're saying, that there's no end in sight to what's going on at the moment. I agree with what everyone has been saying over the past 2 weeks, which is that we're playing the teams at the top of the division. It doesn't appear like they've got out of second gear. They're going through periods in the game where they're not taking chances and could easily be out of sight by half time. I think that was especially true for Derby. But yeah, we've got glimpses over the period where Holden's been in charge that maybe we can be better than we have showed over the season. But they have been small glimpses, and there are caveats to that. So you take Forest Green. I think we were incredibly lucky to get points there. You take Exeter. I missed that game, but I did see that Maynard Brewers made an incredible save at the end, and there was a lot of pressure on the team towards the end of that game. And it's you look at that. Take yesterday. You look at the 2 squads, man for man. You'd probably take 90% of Sheffield Wednesday's team over the equivalent player in the Charlton 11. It's with everything that's going on behind the scenes, it doesn't feel like at any point soon the squad that Charlton has available, or even the 11 that Charlton have available, is going to be able to match the 11s that those at the top of the league do.
Yeah, And well, yeah, like I've been saying, we are miles off. David said, Sheffield Wednesday, you could see why it's 20 wins in a row. They weren't. They were everything that we weren't: intelligent, bigger, taller, faster, stronger. And in Dean Holden's words, they were master of the dark art as well. Our boys dug deep. They kept going, which is all we can ask of them. Also said, which part of Sheffield does the referee live in as well? Jez playing up top, number 10 yesterday. A lot of calls over the last few weeks, Ben, for 2 up top. But, I mean, we have played Jez as part of a front two other times this season. I don't think it works, and I think he's better out wide. We want 2 up top, but maybe not that 2.
Yeah, I think Jez works better out wide. That's why I only double on him. He had that chance. He does come inside, doesn't he? I mean, he had that chance against Derby where Bond flicked it on and he was through. I mean, his pace is good like that to get in behind. But, yeah, I don't think that's the answer because then you lose his effect on the wing. Yeah, I'd prefer, as fans have said, like now if Chucks is out, I'd like to see Kanu on the bench. I mean, he's 18. Just like Lee Burn, I know it's probably because his build is different to Lee Burn's. Lee Burn's obviously very tall and a commanding figure, so that helps him a little bit more. But yeah, I wonder if Lee Burn will be able to start on Tuesday because obviously he's just come back from an injury, so might be worth chucking him on the bench and giving him a chance. But yeah, not Jez up front. I don't think that works as well.
Right, let's have a quick look ahead for the final few minutes to Tuesday's game at Peterborough. Obviously, that rearranged game following the frozen pitch debacle. Hopefully, you guys have still got me. There's been a fair bit of buffering my end over the last few minutes. Yeah, Joe, looking ahead to that game. As I said, with Peterborough picking up that massive result yesterday, that's going to be quite a tough one for us to try and regroup, especially now if as we expect, Chucks is not going to be about. So we're going to be a little bit light up top again. How do we feel going into this one?
I feel like I want to go there and upset them just because of the debacle that we had last time. I feel like it would be, fair for us to win and upset the apple cart. But I think that if they've just scored 5 and they're coming up against our defence, that's not necessarily the most promising sign for us. And we're going to be light on bodies again, aren't we? So I reckon Lee Burns probably did go off with a knock. So I think we're probably going to be down to 1 fully fit striker. And that if Bond is fully fixed, he missed the training in the week, didn't he? So I think we're going to be light on options up top. I think we need to find a way to get some more creativity in the side. And I'm not sure what Holden's going to be able to do to make that happen between now and Tuesday. It's going to be very limited. So, yeah, and it's a long week on the road again, which doesn't really bode well for us either in terms of getting time on the training pitch to get some minutes into players or to assess players that have knocks. So, yeah, I think it's going to be I think this week is just going to be a write-off week for the season, or this stretch of 4 fixtures even, just going to be a bit of a write-off and get through Tuesday, get through Saturday, and then hopefully there's some fixtures around the corner that we can go and attack and start building into next season from. But yeah, credit to all those people who are going up to the rearranged fixture. It's going to be a long old journey, I think, for not a lot of return midweek, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, I mean that's pretty much a given for pretty much every game these days. Anyway, right, I'm going to call it time there because my Wi-Fi has given up the ghost, so hopefully it hasn't buffered too much for you guys. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on this week's live stream. Special thanks to Kyle for coming on, and for Joe and for Ben. Good to speak to all 3 of you.
Yep. Cheers. See you later, Alligator.
Cheers, guys.
And excellent stuff. I'm Louis Meadows. Thanks for joining us then on our live stream or on the podcast afterwards. We shall see you again on Thursday.